live. This is LawCall.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to LawCall, where we're taking your calls live on the air. Tonight, we're talking about fighting the insurance company. So if you have a call about insurance companies, or insurance claims, give us a call, 850-392-1544. And tonight, we're joined by a very special guest, one of our lawyers in our office at Perry & Young, Miss Kelly Robertson. Kelly, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you.
Wonderful,
Les.
wonderful.
Good to see you.
It's been a while since you've been on the show.
It has been.
I'm sure the viewers would love to know a little bit about you. Why don't you tell us about yourself, your practice, how you came to work with us, and all that good stuff.
Wow. Well, I've been a lawyer for 25 years something. I can't even remember. It's been too long. Came to work for Perry & Young because I value defending folks who are being wrongfully wronged by other people, and I've enjoyed it very much.
Very good, very good. Kelly and I have been practicing about the same amount of time, but you started out doing a lot of public defender work.
I did. I was a criminal defense attorney for a long time.
So you got to try a bunch of cases, so no stranger to the courtroom.
That's correct.
And sometimes we have to fight these battles in the courtroom, but a lot of times we're able to settle these cases without having to go that far. So, you know, one of the big questions I always get when somebody comes in and they have a question about an injury, they've been involved in an accident, maybe they slipped, they fell on somebody's property. Do I have to try the case? Are we going to have to try the case? What do you typically tell people when they come in and they just ask that very basic question about, you know, I have this claim, but I don't want to go to trial?
Usually calmer minds will prevail, and we can actually work something out before we actually have to get to trial. Trial usually only happens if there is an issue of liability or somebody's being recalcitrant on the other side, and we just have to file in order to make them do what they're supposed to do. It's usually a situation where either between mediation or between just discussions with the adjusters on the other side, we can actually work it out for you.
Right, right. So, you know, another one of the big questions that I get a lot is, you know, Florida, as you know, is a no-fault state, which we've talked about it a lot on the program about what it means to be no fault. And I've had people come up and they say, well, I got in a wreck and I got hurt, but I can't do anything because it's a no-fault state. And that's not exactly what it means when they're talking about no fault. They're really talking about the PIP insurance on your policy. Tell us about what is PIP and why is it there and what's the point of it?
PIP insurance is a wonderful thing because it gives you at least $10,000. You can buy more if you want to, but it gives you at least $10,000 of insurance that takes care of you and your people that are important to you. And that's why it exists, and it actually allows you, if you don't have health insurance, to be able to pay for some of your medical bills so that you're not in a situation where you're just out of pocket all the time. And it's super important that you see somebody within 2 weeks of your wreck so that you don't get in a situation where you lose that PIP insurance that you've been paying for. And people worry about, I'm using my insurance, is that going to hurt me? Is that bad? And it's not, because you're paying for that. That's a benefit that you're paying for, and that's part of your policy. And so don't be afraid to use that insurance. Don't be afraid to make sure that you inform your insurance company that you've had this incident so that you can get that benefit.
Right. You know, it's one of the, there's two types of insurance that are required for automobile people that operate or own automobiles in the state of Florida. One of them is personal injury protection, which is that $10,000 medical benefit that Kelly was telling you about. And that goes towards paying any medical expenses that are causally related to the injuries you received in the accident. If you don't see a doctor within 2 weeks of an accident, you lose that PIP insurance. So it's very important that you go to the hospital, go to the emergency room, go to an urgent care, see a doctor, see a physician that can make a proper diagnosis and make the determination that you do in fact need medical care. And if you do that within 2 weeks, you will have that $10,000 medical benefit. And it's really good because, I mean, yeah, you have to pay for it. So, I mean, you're required to have it, which is another reason you're required to use it. I mean,
right.
if you may have health insurance, or you may say, well, why do I have to use my own policy? Why do I have to use my own insurance if this other person is who caused the wreck? It's because under Florida law, you're required to use that insurance to pay for medical treatment before any other coverage is to be used. So it's a requirement, actually. And people don't like to hear that, but you know, unless the legislature wants to change the law and move away from a no-fault system to a fault-based system, to where if you cause a wreck, then you are responsible for those expenses, which is how most other states in the country do it. Until we go into that fault-based system, we're stuck with having the PIP insurance, which can be very helpful because a lot of people don't have health insurance.
Right.
It can be very helpful for that. The other type of insurance that is required in the state of Florida is property damage coverage. Now, property damage liability coverage is for
property damage of the other person that
Right.
you actually were in the involved incident with if you're at fault. But it's interesting because people come in all the time and they'll say, oh, I'm fully insured. I'm fully insured.
I got full coverage.
I got full coverage.
Right.
Full coverage is not really full coverage because you're only required to have that $10,000 in property damage and $10,000 in PIP. And that does not mean that you have bodily injury or uninsured motorist or anything else that's really good for you that protects you. And so it's important that you investigate what full coverage actually is, because $10,000 in property damage and $10,000 in PIP is not enough at the end of the day for
Right.
anybody's sake.
Right. Folks, if you have a minute, if you can if you have your insurance information on your phone, pull up your app, pull out your policy if it's close by, take a look at it. If you're somebody that went into an insurance agent's office, or maybe you went online to one of these companies' websites and we're looking for the bare minimum coverage, the cheapest coverage you can get in order to be legal in the state of Florida, then what you're going to end up with is a PIP, property damage policy only. And that means if you cause a wreck and if you injure somebody, you are not going to have any coverage to protect yourself from claims that may be made against you. It also means that if you are involved in a wreck and it's somebody else's fault, there's a very good chance that you're going to get hit by somebody that doesn't have that insurance to compensate you, which is why you need
Uninsured motorist.
uninsured motorist coverage. And we've talked about that a lot on this show before, uninsured motorist being the type of coverage that you buy that will step into the shoes of the at-fault party. Will actually compensate you for your medical bills, your lost wages, pain and suffering, things of that nature. It really is imperative, because Florida is a state that does not require bodily injury liability coverage. It is imperative that you go and purchase the uninsured motorist coverage if you are in the very unfortunate situation to be involved in a wreck with the majority of drivers on the road.
And I think too, Les, I think we're either number 2 or number 3 in the nation for the most people that are driving around without any insurance whatsoever.
Oh, by far. By far.
So it's super important that you protect yourself with that UM.
I actually believe,
coverage.
I think we are either the only state or one of 2 states in this entire country that does not require a driver to carry liability coverage to compensate people if they are negligent and they injure them. And that goes for reckless drivers, drunk drivers, people that have sleep, fatigue issues, medical, whatever the issue may be, and take a look around. It's not like we have the best drivers in this state. It seems like every morning when I'm riding into the office and I'm listening to the Perry and Young traffic report, there's a wreck on 231, there's a wreck on Transmitter, there's a wreck on 388. There's something like that, and it's every day. And so we live with that situation. So please don't be one of those people that finds out the hard way after you've come into our office or another attorney's office and you're talking about coverage, and finds out that not only have you been injured by somebody that doesn't have coverage, but you also do not have coverage that you could have purchased yourself that would protect you. And from a cost standpoint, I can tell you uninsured motorist coverage is probably one of the cheapest lines of coverage on your policy. The most expensive is property damage.
That's right.
Because it's the most common claim. It's the most common thing that insurance companies have to pay for. Fender benders in the parking lot, backing into a tree, backing into a pole. All those property damage claims, they're not very big, but they add up. But if you look at your policy and it shows you the premium, your property damage and your PIP are going to be your 2 highest coverages on your policy. So everything else that really could benefit you is typically not as expensive as it may seem.
That's
so,
right.
Take a look at those policies. We're coming up time to take our first break. Again, we're taking your calls live. If you got a question about insurance or insurance claims or injury claims in general, go ahead and give us a call, 850-392-1544, or you can shoot us an email at lawcall@wmbb.com, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to Law Call, where we're taking your calls live. Tonight we're talking about fighting the insurance company, and so if you've got a question about that, give us a call, 850-392-1544. And we actually have a call that's on the line right now. I believe we have Carolyn from Washington County. Carolyn, go ahead with your question.
Yes, sir. I was wanting to find out, so you get in an accident, the semi turns off in front of you, you have medical problems, you have to see various medical doctors, and you get a lawyer. What percentage of the amount that is recouped from the semi company is the person that was in the accident eligible for?
Carolyn, are you saying what the person that has the injury claim, how much do they typically get out of the settlement, or the percentage-wise?
Right.
Okay, sure, yeah. So, you know, that's one of the questions we typically talk about at the very beginning when somebody does come to our office and they want to, they want to know the dollars and cents, obviously, because, until we get to a point to where we can wave a magic wand and automatically restore people's health, really the only way you can value these types of claims is with money, and money to pay for medical expenses, money to pay for prosecuting a claim. But Carolyn, that's a great question. So in Florida, the Florida Bar actually regulates our entire industry, and they tell us what we are permitted to charge in a contingency fee scenario. So personal injury lawyers like Kelly and I, we do not charge by the hour. So if you come to our office and you have an injury claim, you're not going to get a bill from us. We don't charge by the hour. We don't send out monthly invoices like most lawyers that do other types of work do. We work on a contingency fee basis, meaning that our fee is a percentage of the amount of money that we recover for you. Now, we're not allowed to settle a case without your permission. We're not allowed to keep secrets from you. Everything has to be completely transparent, and when we do finally get a settlement, it has to be a number that you approve, and you also get a closing statement at the very end that gives an itemized list of all the expenses, the fees. Now, for the fees, per the Florida Bar rules, we are permitted to charge 1/3 of the recovery for any claim that we have pre-suit, meaning before a lawsuit is filed. If a lawsuit is filed and the defendant admits, oh yeah, we were at fault, we just don't think your damages are what you say they are. We don't think your injuries are as bad as what you say they are. We agree we're at fault, but we don't think you're asking for too much money. If they agree that they're at fault and they only ask for a trial on damages, then the fee stays at 1/3. However, if they say, no, you're at fault, or somebody else is at fault, and it requires more witnesses, perhaps an expert witness, maybe somebody that talks about accident reconstruction, maybe somebody that talks about causation of medical of injuries, then the fee can go to 40% because of that additional risk, because of that additional cost. The other reason is because we advance case costs for our clients. We don't expect our clients to shell out money to pay filing fees, to buy copies of medical records, to hire expert witnesses. And the typical personal injury claim, if you have to go all the way through trial, even if it's a very simple claim, you're talking maybe a couple of doctors, you have court reporters, you have mediation fees, you have filing fees. By the time you get to trial, you could have $25,000, $30,000 in a case. So that is money that we put out to prosecute a case. Now, if we get a recovery, we ask for our fees to be paid, and we ask for those case costs to be reimbursed as well. So because there's no guarantee on getting a recovery, we're very judicious in how we go about spending money. We don't try to spend money just for the heck of it. It's only on something that we feel like will prosecute the case successfully for our client. So there's a lot of factors, but typically most cases will settle before suit is filed. Mm-hmm. And I know these percentages because we have to deal with them when we're dealing with insurance companies and subrogation claims, and Kelly and I will get into that in a minute. Mm-hmm. But usually the fee, after you take into account the attorney's fees and the case cost, usually it comes out to about 35% of the settlement value would end up going to pay the attorney's fees and the case cost. Of that 65% that's left over, and this is just a ballpark figure, a lot of it depends on what your medical expenses are before we know what would actually end up going into your pocket. If you have health insurance that you've used to pay for medical expenses, your health insurance company may have a lien. They have a subrogation provision in their policy that says, hey, if you get a third-party recovery, you got to pay us back. Usually we can get those liens knocked down pretty significantly, but the bigger benefit of using your own health insurance is, if you go in off the street and you go to get an MRI, they may charge you $1,500 for that MRI. Well, if you have health insurance, your health insurance company has a pre-negotiated rate with that MRI facility, and they may pay them $300 for that MRI. And so when you have to go back and pay your health insurance back, you may end up having to pay them a percentage of that $300 versus that $1,500 uninsured cost. And so a lot of it depends on whether they have health insurance. A lot of it depends on the types of procedures they've had. Has it just been physical therapy, maybe some chiropractic, or has there been a surgery involved, or has there been pain management involved? There's a lot of factors. But usually the clients end up getting, probably anywhere from 50 to 60% on average, I would say. Sometimes it's higher. But another big thing to think about as well is, well, gosh, why would I pay a lawyer and all these other people 40% of my settlement? The reason behind that is, we've talked about this in the past, there's been an Insurance Institute study that was done several years ago that looked at all the data and realized that claims where an attorney is involved typically gets 3 to 5 times more than a claim where a person is representing themselves. So yes, there is a cost that's typically that goes with attorney rep claims, but usually you get more bang for the buck on the back end.
We pay for ourselves.
Yeah, we're usually able to pay for ourselves in that regard by getting the better deal for our client. So that's I know I gave a long-winded answer, but that's a rough breakdown of how I've seen things in my practice. I believe we have another phone call that just came through as well. Patty, go ahead with your call.
Yes, I was renewing my insurance and getting quotes, and 2 reputable companies. I have really good coverage, except they discouraged me by an uninsured motorist because they said I only had 1 vehicle. I didn't understand that.
I don't understand that really either, Patty. I'm sorry to hear that they actually said that to you, because if anything, they should be encouraging you to do that, because first of all, they're going to get more of a premium out of you, and number 2, it's to protect you. I'm discouraged to hear that somebody said that to you.
I'm discouraged, Patty, as well, but I'm not surprised. And this is something that I've been looking into. A lot of people these days buy insurance policies online. First off, if you're going to buy insurance for you and your family, get an agent. Find a local agent. We have some very good local agents here in town that work for all these big companies. Go and make an appointment, sit down with them, tell them what your situation is. They'll ask you about your assets, they'll ask you about your job, they'll ask you, what are your concerns, what do you do? And an agent that understands insurance laws in Florida can help tailor a policy specific to your needs and also to fit your budget. And it may mean that, hey, look, you could really use uninsured motorists, but it's going to cost a little bit more, so maybe the limits aren't as high over here, but we can adjust something over here. There's a lot of ways they can tailor those policies to fit your needs better. But in terms of being discouraged from buying uninsured motorists, that's disappointing. The default position in Florida, if you read the Florida statutes, the fallback or default position is every policy with bodily injury coverage must include uninsured motorist coverage, meaning you have to specifically reject that coverage.
You have to sign a document that says, I am rejecting this coverage for and I'm rejecting this and I'm rejecting that.
And that policy explains, like, this is valuable coverage. Here's why you need it. If you are hit by somebody that doesn't have insurance, or if you are hit by somebody that doesn't have enough insurance to cover your claim, this is coverage that can pay for you. Now, will it save you money to not have uninsured motorists? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. It will be a lower premium. However, it's money well spent. When you look at the cost of short-term disability, long-term disability, life insurance, things of that nature, uninsured motorist coverage fits a very similar need that those things would cover, except it's way, way, way cheaper. Now, it only applies to injuries that are involved with a motor vehicle, but it follows you. It doesn't matter if you're in your vehicle, your mom or dad's vehicle, your aunt and uncle's vehicle, your friend's vehicle, you're on a bus. you're in an Uber, you're in a taxi, it doesn't matter. The uninsured motorist coverage will typically follow you wherever you go. So it's not just, I'm driving in my car, it's any car you're in.
And the other thing, the whole idea of just one car, the only reason that makes any difference is if you're trying to get stacked uninsured motorists, because you can actually double your policy if you actually have two vehicles and you have uninsured motorists and it's stacked coverage. So for example, if you have a $25,000 policy and you have two vehicles, you can end up with $50,000 per accident rather than just the 25. So that's the only reason why that one car should matter, which it just doesn't make any sense.
You know, Patty, the thing is you can still have stacking coverage with one vehicle. I've seen it happen sometimes where people, they have a car and they have a motorcycle, and their motorcycle doesn't have uninsured motorist coverage, but because they had stacked uninsured coverage on their vehicle, they could stack that policy on top of their motorcycle, and now they have uninsured motorist coverage on that. But otherwise, stacking, again, like Kelly said, it multiplies the amount of coverage times the number of vehicles you have. You could also elect unstacked or non-stacked, which just means, you know, you could have 10 cars, but if you have a 25-50 policy, you got $25,000 per person, $50,000 per occurrence for uninsured. But yeah, folks, don't get discouraged. Don't get talked out of buying that coverage. It is very valuable. And if you are unfortunate enough to be involved in a wreck, you're going to understand very quickly why. We're up against a break. We're going to take our last break for the night. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thanks for staying with us at LawCall. Again, we were taking your calls live tonight. We're coming to the end of the show, but you know, I wanted to follow up on that last segment again about what Patty said. That really does bother me.
It bothers me a lot.
I'm wondering if that's something that our insurance commissioner might want to take a look at if you're watching out there. I've had a lot of people talk about how they go to fill out those applications online and it automatically defaults them to not selecting uninsured motorists, which is not what the statute contemplates and it's not what it requires. And then a lot of people think, well, I thought I had it, and then they end up not having it. I think it sounds like a pretty underhanded trick. I don't know if I would hate to think that companies are out there encouraging their agents to try to convince people not to buy this type of coverage, especially in Florida, when we are a no-fault system where we do not put liability on the people that actually cause wrecks. I would hate to think that there's some incentive out there for people to not write that type of coverage. I know my agent personally, and I've got other friends that are agents. I know they don't do that.
Nope, not at all.
In fact, they're like, no, you need to get it.
Please get it. Please get it.
Yeah. So again, pull out your policies if you haven't already. Look it up on your app, and make sure you have that coverage. It's very valuable.
Super valuable.
All right, shout outs. Kelly.
I need to give
Guest gets to go first. Who's your shout out?
I need to give a shout out to my two beautiful daughters and my sweet husband for supporting me in everything that I do. I want to give a shout out to Raven Taylor, now Mesnick, who got married this weekend. There she is. Isn't she a beautiful bride? She has been working with Perry and Young for many, many years, and her mother/grandmother, Harriet, in that picture in the pink, has been with us also for many, many years.
And old Kenny over there on the other side. And old Kenny over there,
and there's her sweet husband, Dalton. Oh my gosh, they were such a handsome couple.
It was a really nice,
really fun wedding.
Very nice wedding.
Super.
I want to give a shout out to my mom and dad, my wife Jen, and my kids. Miss Pam, thank you for always watching.
Miss Pam.
Rick from the Marlin, man, I can't forget you. You always call in to remind me. Ed and Jamie. Ed was the most active man in the neighborhood. Now Jamie is the most active woman in the neighborhood. That's an inside joke.
If we don't call out Buck, he'll be mad.
Buck, Gary, Nick and Lauren. I don't know if we have another picture up there, but I did go fishing with Brian. Gary asked last week who the better fisherman was.
Show the picture, please. I hope they have the picture.
Is there a Oh, they don't have the picture. They don't have a picture of the fish box. Here's what I can tell you about the fish box. I had a lot of fish in that box, and other people did not have as many. So that should answer Chef G String's question from last week about who the better fisherman is. Folks, again, thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll be back next week at the same time, taking your calls live, and have a great week.